For the second year in a row, the White Sox have sent their opening day starter to the minors. That's what happens when a rotation is put together on the cheap.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter. Welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, it's this week's Turned Out Differently segment, wondering if Shane Smith would have been demoted had he gotten just one more out and avoided a prolonged at-bat. That comes after discussing Andrew Benintendi being put into a platoon, being the latest example of how bad it looks that he has the distinction having the richest contract in franchise history. But first, let's talk about the team demoting their opening day starter for the second straight season, not being a good look, but is to be expected when not many financial resources are poured into the rotation. So this is going to be one of those shows where there's going to be some Jerry Reinsdorf frustration. Although, there's hope. We got to wait for it, though. We got to wait till 2029 for Jerry to sell the team. And sometimes a good venting session is needed surrounding how this team invests its limited financial resources into the roster. Now, the White Sox have had 5 different opening day starters over the past 5 seasons. And it comes down to one major theme. This team doesn't pay for starting pitching, because it's not like the White Sox have not had all-star caliber arms being their opening day starter. 2022, Lucas Giolito. 2023, Dylan Cease. 2024, Garrett Crochet. 2025, Sean Burke. This year, Shane Smith. Now imagine having all 5 of those arms in your rotation right now. But we can't have nice things, because 3 of them, Giolito, Cease, and Crochet, are no longer on this team because, in part, the organization wasn't going to pay them a lucrative contract extension. The other reason, the team decayed around them, that they had to be traded for young talent because this team struggles to draft and develop players. They have the worst amount of players drafted to get to the major leagues, 99. They're 30th. And eventually, when not enough financial resources are invested in the rotation, you end up with this current bad look of having 2 straight seasons where your opening day starter gets demoted. Now, Sean Burke is starting to show that maybe it's just part of the development process. And the hope is it's the same for Shane Smith. However, during this rebuild period, it would be nice to have maybe one established starter, even if it's just the continued 1-year, $10, $12 million deal. That guy that can at least be solid enough that that he can take the ball every 5 days, get through 6 innings, and give the Sox a chance to win. Is that so much to ask? But instead, you got to deal with the roller coaster of development. And then you're signing guys on bounce back deals from bad seasons or from bad big league careers that they have to go to Japan because they cost between $1.5 to $6 million. Now, I like the Anthony Kay signing. But if you go back to the offseason episodes, I was advocating for the front office to maybe add then another veteran starter, even if it was at the 1-year, $10 to $12 million bin. Those guys can be solid pitchers, and then they can be traded at the deadline for, decent young talent. I mean, you still got fans pining for Lucas Giolito to come back to the South Side. And either he's still asking for a boatload of money, or I don't know why he's still on the street then, because he had a decent season last year in Boston after coming back from that injury. I mean, I wouldn't be completely opposed if they circled back and brought him back, but although I did an episode during the offseason, I don't think he wants to come back here. That's just my opinion on that. But Shane Smith, he earned the right to be the opening day starter based on his All-Star 2025 season. But it just would have been nice to have a little bit of a backup at the number 2 starter role, for example. And the one thing, though, that you still, have to look at is how did the team get him? They got him on the cheap. Rule 5 draft, meaning all it cost them was $100K. Now, it's the two things can be true concept. The White Sox should always be using the Rule 5 draft because it's a cheap way to add pieces. And if you can get an all-star season out of the Rule 5 draft, that is almost a miracle. So that should be celebrated. But on the flip side, it speaks to, again, the lack of financial resources put into the rotation, and then you are going to have these certain issues. I mean, the opening day starter they had in 2024, which did surprise everyone and turned out to be a great choice, Garrett Crochet, he was traded away due in part because the organization was never going to pay him a $160 million extension. I mean, think about it. Garrett Crochet could be that guy right now. Now, obviously, they leveraged him well enough to where they're going to get the benefit of trading him, but there is a reality where you could have a dominant ace pitcher right now, at least giving you a chance to continue to get better and not have to worry about every 5 days or every start. Is this guy going to be able to get through 5 innings? And it also meant then you got to have cheap options for the 2025 opening day honors. It was down to, remember, Sean Burke, Davis Martin, or Martin Perez. I remember doing those episodes. And it's really then the context of you have 2 pitchers who still had not established themselves, vying for the opening day start, and 1 guy you brought in on a bounce back deal. And when you have these cheap options, it usually means you are in for starting rotation ups and downs. You're in for this inconsistency. Now, Sean Burke is pitching better after getting demoted last summer. And when he did return, the one good thing is he had discovered some extra velocity. He was throwing 99 to 100. Still had some command issues, but there was at least this promise that, okay, we can get this moving back in the right direction. And the last 2 starts, you are starting to see better command. You are seeing that 4 great starts in 2024 and that amazing opening day start in 2025 version of Burke. And that is why you can have hope that Shane Smith can get fixed in Charlotte. However, relying on non-established young pitchers to be your top of the rotation guys, due in part because of cost, comes with the risk that you may have to send them down to AAA at some point, or you may have to demote them to the bullpen to get them rewired. Although I discussed on yesterday's bonus show, I just don't like that they're not giving Smith basically the same amount of time that Burke got to try to turn things around. I mean, they basically gave Burke a whole summer because his command issues started popping up around May. And he didn't get demoted until I think August. I mean, they gave Smith 3 starts and like, oh, you're going to Charlotte. And you can't be here right now. You gotta deal with that in the minors. Now, part of the lack of resources in the rotation is sort of by design because you want to have a path for your 3 promising pitching prospects in Charlotte. Your top 3 pitching prospects, Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Tanner McDougal, which I feel like I point out every day. But they have the better stuff and higher potential than Smith and Burke, where it would be great for Smith and Burke to figure it all out, to be on track. And that means they're upper tier number 4, number 5 starters, with Schultz, who was pitched really well yesterday at Charlotte, Smith and McDougal being the big 3. And there is a process for all 5 to get there, but there are going to be bumps along the way. And that is why it would have been nice to have better cover with maybe a more established starter that comes with less risks, like there is with Eric Fetty being the St. Louis Cardinals version of himself, or being on 3 teams last year, or Anthony Kay being the guy who had to go to Japan to revive his career. But thankfully, Davis Martin remains reliable. Andrew Benintendi's record free agent contract continues to look terrible, and let's discuss the latest example next. The NBA playoffs are almost here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. And I like playing FanDuel's traditional money lines, the spreads, and over and unders because it makes watching the game more interesting. I get more engaged when I got something riding on the line. However, I'll always maintain it's better to play the props, the parlays, and the futures if you want a shot at bigger payouts. For example, if you think San Antonio can win the whole thing, that is at plus 500 the last time I checked. So if you throw it down, say $10 on that, you could potentially win $50 if that happens. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, the inboxes are overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate just stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll have been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And I've had to do hiring in some of my past jobs. And what impressed me about Indeed was I was able to get great candidates that HR recruiting and employment agencies just could not provide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes, cut the stress, save more time, and get more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. And baseball is finally back, and to celebrate, I'm giving you a full month of the Everydayer Club for free. Go to LockedOnWhiteSox.supercast.com and use code FINALLY. You'll unlock every episode ad-free. You get access to our private listener group chat. So tap the link in the show notes and use code FINALLY to claim your free month. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. This is now my third season podcasting here. Been covering the team well before then, and I've also covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And Andrew Benintendi is the Milton Wadhams of this team, except he's still getting a paycheck. And it's one of the biggest on the club. The team has not fixed the glitch. He wasn't featured at all during Sox Fest. Really hasn't been, he wasn't in any of like the social media promotional material. You know, he's kind of just there. I'm expecting Will Venable to move him, move his locker to like the furnace room at some point. It's getting to that point. Because he wasn't even told he's in a platoon in left field, or at least that's what he's assuming. He's assuming he's in a platoon. But when you get the richest free agent contract in team history and you produce what he has produced, which is nothing but mostly bad, all he's owed is the money and just running out the clock. That's what it is right now. Just pay him his money because it's guaranteed, and you just got to run out the clock. Although it would have been nice for manager Will Venable to also say one reason you got to have this platoon for Benintendi is not the lefty-righty matchup at the plate, but because his defense in left field continues to decline at horrific levels. I mean, the Orioles had no fear running a single into a double on Benny yesterday because they knew his arm is weak and inaccurate. So they knew they could get to second base with ease. Any ball that was hit to left field yesterday, the Orioles knew, I'm getting a double. Even if it's just the standard hitting a single type balls that you see. Decently hit, bounces in front of Benintendi. They know his arm was so weak, there was no chance he was getting them out at second. And I don't know if you've noticed this lately with Benintendi. He seems to be on this trend lately of providing like one positive contribution. Like he did have a leadoff triple yesterday when he let off the inning. Scored. And I like the hustle. But then he like fouls it up with like 2 or 3 gaffes. Like striking out twice. One of them with runners in scoring position. But despite hitting 194 to start the season, he thinks he should have been up in the 7th with 2 outs, runners on first and second against the lefty, with a chance to either tie the game or put the Sox ahead. But instead, Venable left him for Derek Hill. And it sounds like that's when Benintendi found out about this platoon. The Sun-Times had a write-up on this per Gordon Eddies. I'm sorry if I butchered his name. I know he's a longtime sports writer. Just haven't really heard the pronunciation. I know I'm terrible at pronunciations, but this one, I think he's now kind of like, I think they're kind of having a rotation because Kyle Williams, who was mostly on the White Sox beat last year, friend of the show, love his work. I think he's covering the Cubs because Matty Lee left. And I think then they're kind of having this rotation of like freelance work and Mitch Armentrout. So I don't think they've really established a beat writer, but Gordon is right now writing the recent write-ups. And this is the report he had on chicago.suntimes.com. 1 out in the 7th inning, the Sox trailed by a run against the Orioles. Miguel Vargas had beaten an infield hit. Colson Montgomery has been hit by a pitch, and winning time beckons. Benintendi was the next batter due to hit. He had tripled and scored in his first at-bat, then struck out his next 2 turns. Awaiting him on the hill was a left-handed reliever, Grant Wolfram, who had struck out Munetaka Murakami to start the inning. Quote, obviously, I want to be in that position, Benintendi said, of a chance to deliver. Obviously, I'm not swinging great right now, but I don't think there'll ever be a time where I don't want to be hitting in that spot. It doesn't matter who's on the mound, end quote. Benintendi never got to the plate. White Sox manager Will Venable lifted him for a pinch hitter. Derek Hill, who like Benintendi was a former number 1 draft choice, Hill in 2014, Benintendi 2015, but had labored through long seasons in the minors with just a handful of big league appearances scattered over 6 teams. Hill bats right. Benintendi bats left. Venable said he was playing the right left matchups. Quote, that's a matchup that we're playing there. We were like D Hill. We like D Hill against the lefties, and something we've been doing where we start a righty against the lefties, Venable said. D Hill has gotten no starts as we try to complement this roster. Those are kind of moves we're going to make, end quote. Hill grounded into an inning double play. This was not about Hill failing to deliver in that spot. Even if he had come through, there was still a clear message to Benintendi. Going forward, the man who before Murakami ranked as the highest paid free agent signing in the club history and a player with 2 seasons still left on his deal should expect to be a platoon player. Now, Benintendi also brought up how he does hit lefties well, at least career-wise, and that's maybe why he should not have been in a platoon, at least in the 7th. However, even he admitted that once again, he's off to a terrible start. And here's where I guess you get this supposed controversy. This is what Gordon writes. Benintendi, who had made just 1 start against the lefty this season, Tyler Rogers, on Tuesday, said no one sat him down. No one has sat down and told him explicitly that he will be platooned. Quote, not directly, he said, but I think that just kind of watching how it's gone so far this season, I think that's the route, end quote. Well, first of all, so far this season, look at how your tenure is gone, Andrew Benintendi. Way to get on your jump to conclusions, Matt. But either way, yeah, you're a platoon guy basically at this point. I mean, most big market teams would have DFA'd him this past offseason. I mean, he's on one of the few still clubs that play in a big market where the owner just doesn't believe in sunk cost. I mean, think about it. The Angels were like, Anthony Rendon, here's your money, go away. Now, I give credit for Venable to find ways to not play Benintendi anymore because even in this small sample size, it's clear his bad outfield skills have even deteriorated more. I mean, the positive things he does at the plate is always followed up with more negative outcomes. I still maintain just let the man go and pay him the rest of his money. Just let him be free. Even with all the outfield injuries, he is a liability more than just reaching to the level of a warm body. Well, one at bat going differently and one error not being committed has me wondering, would Shane Smith have been demoted? I want to discuss that next.
Hey, this is Jeff Carr from Locked On Reds, and when it comes to our futures, we all have great ideas when it comes to our job, when it comes to our house, when it comes to our vehicles, all that great stuff. But honestly, when it comes to securing that future, I don't know what I don't know. And when me and my wife sat down to figure out the life insurance thing, Ethos made everything simple. Everything's online, you have a quick and easy application process, and you find out exactly what you need for coverage, all in one spot. Ethos makes everything so convenient when it comes to learning about your own life insurance, because insurance is something that is far beyond batting average or on-base percentage. It's way out in left field for me. Ethos made it all easy. Take just 10 minutes and get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/lockedonmlb. That's ethos.com/lockedonmlb. Application times may vary and rates may vary.
Welcome back to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. And baseball is finally back. And to celebrate, I'm giving you a full month of the Everydayer Club for free. Go to lockedonwhitesox.supercast.com and use code FINALLY. You'll unlock every episode ad-free. You'll get access to our private listener group chat. Tap the link in the show notes and use code FINALLY to claim your free month. So watching Shane Smith on Tuesday battle Gunnar Henderson in an epic 12-pitch at-bat was entertaining to see. I mean, it's two all-stars going at it, and I always love those figurative at-bat chess matches. Smith won it by finally getting Henderson to strike out. However, that exploded his pitch count in the second inning. I mean, he basically did an inning's worth of work in one at-bat. And I kind of have this feeling that it was going to be another short outing for Smith after that. You kind of got the gist that he wasn't going 5. This was going to be probably at best a 4-inning start. And I guess on this Turned Out Differently Thursday segment, I wonder if he cuts that at bat in half and then he's able to go a tick longer, is he getting demoted? I also wonder if Tanner Murray is able to field a ground ball Smith was able to induce in the 4th. That should have been out number 3 instead of an error. Is this team fretting over how Smith burned up the bullpen since he had to be pulled then after 3 2/3 innings? Instead, he gets through 4 innings. You maybe take an assessment. He's probably likely done, but maybe you send him back out there for a few more. Or at least Sean Newcomb is able to pitch the 5th clean, and then he can pitch the 6th clean, and maybe then you can move Leisure to the 7th, and then maybe you have a few, or maybe Newcomb can get through innings 5 through 7. Those types of things. It just makes you wonder because, again, it just seemed like that error being made pulled Smith a little bit too, soon than I think what Venable would have liked, and it completely threw off then how you're going to deploy the bullpen. And it's worth kicking around this on this Turned Out Differently Thursday segment this week, because the one legit reason, and I do think that is a legit reason for demoting Shane, is he's only been able to last through 30% of the potential innings he could pitch in his first 3 starts. Potential 27 innings, and he's only gotten through 8 1/3. The other reasons of, he can't figure things out at the big league level because it's an impact on the team's ability to win, is a total contradictory of what the season is. And I talked about it on yesterday's bonus episode. So if you want to go back and hear kind of what I had to say about that, because Venable did say one of the reasons, at least he mentioned, is the impact he has on us winning. And I want to be like, that just absolutely contradicts what this season is. But not trusting him to get through more innings without evidence? Okay, I'm with you, Will Venable. I'm with you, Chris Getz. I get that. If you want to see him be able to actually prove that, because the stuff looked obviously a lot better on Tuesday, still has to get better at the fastball command, but if you're like, you know what, we can't keep taking this risk that he's going to figure it out at the big league level, let's have him have a couple weeks in Charlotte to get himself right and prove to us he can actually get to 5 and 6 innings. Okay, that's fair. But if he had been able to go, say, 5 innings while still battling some command issues, something Sean Burke sort of had yesterday, is Shane getting demoted? And it sounds like yes, because Venable made it sound like the big league staff just doesn't have the time to deal with him getting turned around at the big league level. And I think that's the thing that's just driving me nuts. As the whole point of the coaching staff turnover in the offseason was to, bring in teachers of the game, help, these guys get better at the big league level, get that internal improvement. Right now, the 2026 White Sox look a heck of a lot like the 2025 White Sox. Now, I got to pause the brakes for myself. And even those that are about to put in the comments, it's still early because in this context, yes, you can apply the standard logic to the White Sox of it's still early, especially when the schedule was set up to play some tough matchups early, and especially like you go from 6 games being played in weather-controlled environments. So, yeah, the offense looked like it could produce runs. But then you go and deal with 6 games in chilly Chicago, the offense looks like it can't score runs consistently. However, I'm just wondering if Zach Bove is supposed to be this better pitching teacher than Ethan Katz. And I'm fine with the team moving on with Ethan Katz for the record. I'm just saying one of the reasons it seemed like to me and how the context of what I always heard in the offseason was they just wanted somebody that's maybe a better teacher that can relate better. That's why they moved on from Ethan Katz. Why does Smith have to go to Charlotte then to work on his fastball command and his bullpen sessions and repeating his his mechanics? Why is Jedickson Paez getting waived after 3 games? Side note, I agree with the Paez being waived. I'm just using it more as a point of, isn't Bove supposed to be this great worker with young pitchers? And so far the solution is, well, let's waive them or demote them. But this is more venting because, again, you can apply the early card to at least Bove. Side note, where you can apply and where I will fight back on the not being able to apply the it's early card is, when we're getting, the freak out and the nervous of how the season could potentially play out because, we've had 3 years and the team is following that trend. 3 years, including a historically awful season of the same type of bad early baseball being played. And it's still early. 3 years we've been proven that, nope, it's going to turn out badly. So that's all I'm saying. When it comes to the final outcome, sure. So it's a kind of 2 things can be true at once. Anyways, in the case of Bove, there is a transition period that should be granted as he still has to learn this pitching staff and they have to learn about him and they have to learn about going and communicating and the process. There should be a transition period. And maybe this is also pitching director Brian Bannister making the call that Shane needs to right himself in a less pressure-filled situation because he definitely needs to get the confidence back and throwing that fastball. But I do wonder if he is able to eat up 6 innings on Tuesday, was the less pressure situation be staying in the big leagues? Because wins and losses still should not matter this season. This is a rebuild. He should actually be in a less pressure situation in Chicago. So it just, again, what gripes me is the messaging. It should have just stuck to, look, we need him to prove that he can eat up innings because he's burning up the bullpen, and we want him to do it in Charlotte. That's it. That's what it should have been. Not, well, he can't right himself here because you're telling us other guys get a runway. Sean Burke got 2 months last year in 2025. That's just my point. That is what's grinding my gears. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. I'll be back tomorrow with either a guest to discuss how acceptance is the way to survive being a White Sox fan, but if it falls through, because I'm still trying to work out some scheduling there, I will have the weekly Fan Poll Friday segment. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever you get your audio podcasts, as this show is available on places such as Apple or Spotify. You can email me with your questions and comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can follow me at Todd J. Dub. Also, the show has a TikTok page at Locked On White Sox. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On White Sox ad-free plus members-only Discord access and so much more. Head to LockedOnWhiteSox.supercast.com to join the club. And if you've already signed up, tell your friends to join. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, for your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.